Welcome to Radio Entrepreneurs. This is Steve Scheer sitting in for Jeffrey Davis, and today we're featuring a FBA finalist in the large category, Joe Piantedosi. Good to see Joe again. How are you, Joe?
Steve. Nice to be here. Thank you. Great
Tell
to
us
be
a little
back.
bit about your business, please, for our listeners.
Well, it's funny. My grandfather, Salvatore, started the company in 1916, so we're coming up on our 100th year.
Wow, fantastic.
Next year. And he came from Italy. He came from Avellino, the Avellino region of Italy.
Okay.
And started with a horse and wagon and settled in Everett, Mass. But what he did was he bought a blind horse. It's an interesting story.
A blind horse.
He could not afford a healthy horse, unfortunately. But he took care of this horse like it was his baby. And every day he would drive his horse and wagon from Everett into Boston, the north end of Boston. And he started buying bread from actually Bischetto's Bakery and a couple of other bakeries in the north end of Boston, would bring them back to Everett and deliver the products house to house. And did that for a couple of years, several years. In the meantime, he met my grandmother, who was a North End native. She lived on Endicott Street. And they got married. He moved her to Everett. And she was a pioneer career woman. And she, I don't want to say she was the brains and he was the brawn, but she was a very smart woman. And she said, I think if we baked the bread ourselves, we'd make more money.
Right.
So they'd save some money. They built like a garage bakery. She tended the shop. He still delivered. He had to hire bakers. And the interesting story is, if he hired, he became partners. He was the landlord to a family, the Solimini family. This is an interesting story. And the Solimini family were a father and two sons in the North End, but they came out to Everett. They baked the bread, and they had that great relationship for a couple of years. And old man Solimini, as my grandfather called him, and he was probably much younger than my grandfather, came to one day and he said, "My boys are crazy." He said, this was per my grandfather from old man Solimini, that they don't like being here in the country. Everett was the country to them. They wanted to be back in Boston, the North End, but they also wanted to get out of the bakery business. They wanted to get into the restaurant business. So at that point, my grandfather, they parted on very good terms. My grandfather was forced to learn how to bake bread. He had three sons at the time, three young sons, one of which was my dad, the middle one, Joe. But he had Carmen, Joseph, and John, and brought them in before school, after school, weekends, vacations, holidays. And my grandmother did tend the shop. My grandfather still made the deliveries and and baked bread, and the boys did everything. And it just evolved from there. And sidebar is the Solimini family ended up going in the restaurant business, and their daughter-in-law, one of the boys, ended up marrying Felicia Solimini. And Felicia's was the long-running restaurant in the North End.
Right.
And actually, her son ended up opening one up in Stoneham, which he recently sold. But the irony with that story was Bob Hope's favorite cook, chef, restaurateur was Felicia. He came to Boston one day, I guess, in the 30s or 40s, and he walked into her restaurant. Someone said, "You have to cut to this restaurant." He walked up the stairs of Felicia's restaurant in the North End, and he saw Felicia, and she resembled his wife, Dolores.
Oh, wow.
And he said, "Oh, my God, you look like my wife." They became instant friends. He would fly her out to his home out in California on a regular basis. Jeez. She cooked for him, loaded his freezers, was at his dinner parties, and they had a very long-standing relationship till she died before him, I believe.
Today, how big is your company?
Well, we're now located in Malden. We moved to Malden in the mid-'70s, and we ship internationally. Actually, we do. We're still a local bakery. We still do local sales, and we do most of the sub shops in the greater Boston area and throughout New England. But we expanded into national business, and we do restaurant chains from coast to coast. And some of these chains have taken us into places like the Bahamas, Puerto Rico, Hawaii, even Mexico and Canada.
If any of our listeners want to get in touch with you, how would they do that?
You can check out our website, piantedosi.com, and our toll-free number is 800-339-0080.